So, b'siyata d'shmaya, we're jumping back in to Likutei Moharan Yomi. Today's an extra special day. There will not be a day like this for the rest of this particular series. B'ezras Hashem, we should be learning together for many, many long months and years. The Sefer, and we should be all based in Yerushalayim, B'ezras Hashem. Not just based in Yerushalayim, all of us should be in Yerushalayim, B'karev. But today we're going to take a step back, mamash a step back, even outside of Likutei Moharan. And we're going to try b'siyata d'shmaya with Hashem's help, and we need a tremendous amount of siyata d'shmaya for a shir like this, to go through basic klalim, basic principles in penimiyus haTorah, without which we really can't move an inch in the Sefer Likutei Moharan, which is completely based on the Kabbalah of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, filtered through the Kabbalah of the Ramak and the Ari. And it's really important, like crucially important, to at least have a basic understanding of the basic principles of Kabbalah, which is called the Seder HaShtalshelus, to understand the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created and creates the world through the blueprint of the 10 Sefiros, which we're going to get into. And if you flip over the sheet, we're going to take a look at what's called the 5 Olamos, or the Partzufim, and how those are wrapped up into the letters Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. B'ezras Hashem. Just two technical announcements before we begin. You may have seen the message on the chat that I had a lot of requests because there was a lot of chatter, and people don't realize it. There's like almost 400 people on the chat. Every little message you send is, 400 people are getting the message. So people are saying, I want to be a part of it, and I want to get the links, and I don't want to miss announcements, but it's getting a bit much. And so I turned that chat into admin only. I opened up a new chat for those who want to be part of the banter and the discussion and the excitement and everything else, without worrying that I'm going to private message you and say, hey, chill, which I've done, and I don't like doing, but trying to manage everybody's priorities. And so there is a new chat that's open. That's announcement number 1. Announcement number 2 is that the siyata d'shmaya, it's not absolutely 100% confirmed yet, but it seems that there's a very, very precious Jew in Chicago who has graciously taken it upon himself. It's not so shy for us here, but for anybody in America who's committed to starting the journey Amud Yomi, a free Likutei Moharan, up to 200 Likutei Moharans. Unbelievable. So hopefully, if we can figure out which edition and how to set this up, we'll be making that announcement, B'ezras Hashem, on the groups. And for anybody who's listening, for anybody who's watching the video, that might be something extremely exciting. B'ezras Hashem. Amazing. Mikam Chesra. Okay, let's jump into it. B'dechilu rechimu mamash. Torah has 4 levels: Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. The Sod of Torah is not somewhere else in some different realm than the Pshat, or the Remez, or the Drush. It's one body of knowledge. If everybody can mute, we'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's one body of knowledge, and it's held and contained within the Psukim and within the Mamar Chazal. It's all there. But there are varying levels of interpretation, level after level after level after level. The side of Torah is generally, let's try to make a bit of room. The side of Torah, thank you for joining us. Morning. The side of Torah is generally contained within the Kisvei Arizal, and the Kisvei Ari is based on the revelations in the Zohar HaKadosh, which were already contained in a more primordial form in the Agados of Shas and the Midrashim, which the Vilna Gaon writes, all Sisrei Torah is already contained in the Agadah. If you know how to understand the basics, so every Agadah Gemara is essentially containing that wellspring of Sod, but it was revealed in a way that was never revealed before, because he was given permission from Shemayim, through Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Abba, his scribe, and the Chavrai Kadisha, and then it was reflected and refracted to the teachings of the Ari HaKadosh. And essentially, what the realm of Sod enables us to do is to understand 2 basic areas of spirituality that are not communicated, not in Nigla, both from the standpoint of the Gemara, Mishnah's Gemara, and not in the area of Halacha. It's a completely different body of knowledge, and you're not going to find one in the other. And so if a person is hoping to get this, connection to Torah through Mishnah Berurah and Sugyas and Shas, it's not where you look. You don't look in geometry for poetry. It's just not there. you have to look in this area of Torah, and most people go through their whole lives never having access to it and wondering why there's a part of them that's so thirsty, right? And they don't know where to quench it. So like, this is Torah. Well, sure, but Torah is vast, and Torah has many different components. And when we say that Torah has everything you need, it means Torah has everything you need, but like the whole of it. And so Kabbalah enables us to approach two different areas of metaphysics. One is called Maaseh Bereshis, the inner workings of creation, and the other is called Maaseh Merkava, the inner workings of what's called the divine chariot. Maaseh Bereshis is generally more theoretical, and the overwhelming majority of the Kisvei Ari, the overwhelming majority of the Zohar Kadosh, is in Maaseh Bereshis, teaching us about the inner workings of the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world and recreates the world each and every second. Maaseh Merkava is what we would call a practical Kabbalah. It's funny, there's a book floating around here from one of the Chabad authors called Practical Kabbalah, but he doesn't mean, so it's like an attractive title, but it actually means like how to make Kabbalah practical, not like practical Kabbalah. It's a very thin book for practical Kabbalah, But it means, that area is the meditative and the experiential Kabbalah, Aliyas Neshama and Sheimos and Yechudim and things like this. But Maaseh Bereshis is almost a theological philosophy. Like it isn't like people think abstract mysticism is just floating around. It's incredibly rigorous. It's incredibly systematized, maybe more than any other system in Yiddishkeit. It's incredibly founded on clear philosophical principles, and it's a chachma like any chachma, and a person who devotes himself to attempting to understand it, like Rebbe Nachman says in Sichos Ran, everyone can understand it. And there's this misconception that we've had that this area of Torah is locked off from people, and people are just absolutely misinformed. And if a person looks, especially according to the Mekubalim, who really understood this realm of Torah in the first place and knew what it is and what it isn't, not only is it permissible for us to be learning this, but according to many, many tzaddikim across the whole chug, and I have lists and lists of sources, Be'ezras Hashem, middle of writing a book, that it revolves around the inyanim like this to sort of publicize and make people aware, just how important and crucial it is to learn these teachings. Those tzaddikim said not only that it's permissible, but it's absolutely obligatory. That we have to learn these teachings today, and that we would have no hope in our gullus if we weren't drawing on this redemptive area of Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent to the world through his tzaddikim, through Rabbi Shimon, and through the Ari, afterwards split, and Baal Shem Tov, and the Vilna Gaon in his own way, and the Rashash, and the Ramchal, and Rebbe Nachman, and Lubavitch, and Zidichov, and all the different streams that are flowing forth from the Beis Medrash of the Arizal, which is the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We have to be learning these teachings today. And so the most fundamental system within this realm of Kabbalah, of Side, is the 10 Sefiros, and that's the chart that you have in front of you. I'm just going to hold it up for anybody who's on the video, and we're going to try to do it like this so everybody can see. This system of the 10 Sefiros, this is not usually a thing that you see in yeshiva. It's not, most people are not familiar with this, and they don't understand that they are absolutely familiar with it, because everything that they know in Yiddishkeit is this, fits into this structure, but they're just not aware of it. And Be'ezras Hashem, over the next couple of minutes, we're going to be mindful at 6:45, Be'ezras Hashem, to stop with this part, and we're going to take a look at the Hashmata, the first introduction of Rebbe Nachman. I'm saying the third introduction of Rebbe Nachman to the actual Sefer, and then Monday morning we'll be able to begin Be'ezras Hashem. So we're going to try our best, with Hashem's help, to run through this as quickly as we possibly can. This system of the 10 Sefiros is the blueprint for all of creation. This is what's referred to as the Tselem Elokim. That you and I are created in the form of Elokim, but Hashem doesn't have a form. And then Nefesh HaChaim makes it clear that what we mean when we say Tselem Elokim is the form, the theoretical, conceptual form of the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created and interacts with the world. And let's be clear, what we're looking at does not exist in some physical or even metaphysical realm somewhere else. These are concepts, these are theories, these are ideas we have to be so careful, chas v'shalom, not to be magshim, right? Not to, chas v'shalom, you see a form and all of a sudden, Yiddishkeit is the opposite of forms. It's the one thing that we say again and again and again. Godliness doesn't have a form. You can't represent it in a pestle and a tmuna v'chule v'chein. You have to be very careful about that. So everything we're going to see on this page is conceptual. And let's run through it, mamish, very quickly, and then you're going to see, as we go through Torah by Torah by Torah, that each Torah is founded on different spheres and different concepts. We're going to always be referring back to these charts, so please do keep them. Keep this chart with you. We're going to have it next to us every single teaching as we learn through Likutei Moharan be'ezus Hashem. Let's do a super quick overview. The easiest way to conceive of the spheres is a step, is a creative process, steps in a creative process, and the way to see them is linearly, right, from the standpoint of a vertical extension. Vertical means from top to bottom, and so you begin with Keser, and you imagine as if all the other spheres aren't there, and they're unfolding one after another. And the way that they unfold is from the center, which is Keser at the top, to the right, to Chachma, and then over to the left to Bina. And then because there's no center over there, which is a bit complicated, which we'll discuss, not for now, from Bina down to Chesed. Chesed to Gevura. Gevura to Tiferes. Netzach to Hod Yesod Malchus. Once a person conceives of this extension and this emanative process in this way, the easiest thing to understand from it is that it's a system of balancing out. Because the center is always going to allude to balance, or in another word, synthesis. And each of the two sides are two extremes. What are the extremes from the standpoint of creativity? Either, well, let's use Chesed and Gevura as the perfect examples. Either Chesed, which is way too much, or Gevura, which is way too little. And then we bring it back always to the center point. These are the steps through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. Let's run through what they mean very, very quickly. Keser, and if you want to fill in, this would be a good idea to fill in notes if we don't have pens. Okay, what can you do? So maybe you'll review this year and fill them in. But if you do have a pen with you, this would be a good idea. As I'm going through it, I'm going to speak quickly, but if you can try to fill in some of the corresponding concepts. Yes, I mentioned, right, that when you have Keser, you exclude Das, because there are only 10 spheres and not 11, and there's a reason for that. But for now, we're starting with Keser, so that's a good question. Okay, want to pass around, whoever has extra pens, pass them around. Okay. Keser is associated with the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create, the motivation of Hashem to create the world, and that's why it's first. Because the first thing is that a person wants, even before a person thinks about what they're going to create, the first thing is that the person has a motivation to create. Take any creative example, a person's a composer, a person's an artist, a person's an architect. First thing is they have the motivation to create even before they think about what they're going to create. That's why it's alluded to in this word, Keser, which means crown. Where does a crown sit? On the top of the head. Why on the top of the head? Because it's above your brain. It's above your brain. And so Keser means that which comes before thinking. Okay? It's a crown that sits above the head, and that's why it alludes to the motivation to create even before we start to think about what's being created. Chachma and Bina is where we start, Kiviyachal, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts to think, right, and plan out all of the ensuing creation. This is still above time and above space. It's very difficult for us to grasp these concepts. Above time and above space is the grand master plan for creation. What's the difference between Chachma and Bina? Chachma represents, at least in the way that it manifests in our own bodies, because we're created in this tzelem, it manifests in what's called the right hemisphere of the brain, which has been proven scientifically, and there's a lot of chatter and talk about it, although it's rooted, again, earliest rooting in the Zohar Kadosh, that already tells us that Chachma, the right brain, that manifests within our own tzelem Elokim, has a tchuna, it has a nature. And the nature of the right hemisphere of the brain is big picture, vision, right? When a person takes a step back and sees all the details, they don't see the details. They see all the details merge into a higher blend. That's called the brain of Chachma. Bina is the details within that whole. So it's still the whole picture, and that's why it's above time and above space. It's beyond things unfolding. It's where the story has already been told. But in Bina, we start to have the earliest root of particularity. That's why Bina is called the Shirish HaGevuras. It's the earliest root for Gevura, for severity, because it already deals with the root of distinction, of details. Even though at that point, everything is still absolutely holistic. Everything is contained within the light of Chachma, which is the R of Achdus. But over there, you have the root of disparity of details. Okay. Those three together, and that's why they're blue in this wonderful chart, and I can't remember where I got, but thank you to whoever created this chart. And also please disregard the letters in between. Not going to be focusing on those right now, not relevant for here. Just look at the circles, blue and red. Keser Chachma Bina is blue, and the lower 7 are red, and that's because generally we split the system of the Sefiros into 2 general categories, even though they can be divided many ways. And we're going to speak about one other division in a minute. But they're generally broken into 2 categories. The blue, Keser Chachma Bina, is called Moichin. Those are called the intellectual capacities. And the lower 7 are called the Midas. One of the primary distinctions between Moichin and Midas is that the Moichin, just like the energy, the motor of a car, it's under the engine. We can't interact with it. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's motivating power, the thinking and the planning and the will that's powering all of creation. But once we come down to Chesed, as the pasuk says, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, right? The world begins to be built and founded on the concept of 7. The lower 7 show up in our experience of what was planned out in Chachma and Bina and what was willed in Keser. From Chesed down to Malchus is our experience of reality. That's why everything in the created world is in patterns of 7. 7 days of the week in time, 7 continents in space, 7 musical notes. We had a shir on Hanukkah, 7 planets, 7 classical metals, 7 colors of the rainbow. The whole Olamos is 7. Why? Because it's all founded on the 7 lower spheres, the blueprint of creation. 7. From Chesed down to Malchus. That is one of the most meaningful distinctions within the spheres, even though it's all one unit. And Chas v'Shalom, we don't want to be mafrid between them. It's all one. But we are able to look at the first 3 as being in a separate realm on its own, and the lower 7 as being in a separate realm on its own. The second meaningful distinction in the way of understanding the spheres is by splitting them into 3 kavim. And this is going to become very, very important. 3 kavim, 3 lines. There's the kav yamin, right? There's the right line. So if you looked all the way to the right and look down, you have Chachma, Chesed, Netzach. That's called by the Rosh Hashanah Chachan. If you ever see in Nistris farm Chachan, Ches Nun, that's talking about the Kav Yamin. And on the left side, you have Baga, Beis Gimel Hey, is Bina, Gvura, and Hoid. And then in the middle, you have Keser, Tiferes, Yesod, and Malchus. That's called the Kav HaEmtza. Most of Rabbi Nachman's teachings center around the Kav HaEmtza, because the essence of what it means to be a Jew is synthesis, right? That's what the whole structure tells us. Everything needs to be brought to synthesis. Rabbi Nachman is mamish, just deepening this ruach, this redemptive ruach, coming down from Yesod, which is Mashiach ben Yosef, down to Malchus, which is Mashiach ben David. Everything's in the middle, drawing down from Keser through Tiferes. We're going to see this most of all in Torah Beis next week. The whole Torah Beis, as I'm going to highlight, is all revolving around the Kav HaEmtza. Amazing. Okay.
By the way, are there other Svarim or Hasidus like magnum, opus, opi out there that are focused on one side or not? Or is that not a thing?
Not really. No, not really. I mean, everything always brings it back to the center. But by Rebbe Nachman, the main theme in all of them is Tikkun HaMalchus, is Shemiras HaBris, is Yesod, is connecting to Hashem, is Tiferes, and Keser is Ratzon. Rebbe Nachman, Mamish, everything runs through the Kav HaEmtza, very, very importantly.
What's this division called?
It doesn't have a name. No, it's Kavim, let's say. Kav Yamin, Kav Small, Kav Emtza. Okay. Another way that we see these lower 7 spheres manifested spiritually is in the 7 Ushpizin, the Shiva Royim. So Chesed is Avram Avinu, right? Because Avram Avinu was a vehicle for the Midah of Chesed. Gvura is Yitzchak Avinu. Tiferes is Yaakov Avinu. Netzach is Moshe. Hoid is Aaron. Yesod is Yosef, because he's called the Yosef at Tzaddik, and that's what the pasuk says. V'Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Tzaddik is connected to Yesod, and finally Malchus, of course, is David HaMelech. Those are the lower 7. Now let's go back to what we were speaking about earlier of the Sefiros as steps in a creative process. So we went through Keser, which is the motivation, and then Chachma, big picture thinking, Bina, the details. Let's now go down into the lower 7, which get a little bit more complicated. Because from Chesed, like we said, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, the world starts to get created. So Chesed is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ready to bring this thing into being, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to create everything at once. Too much. Chesed, right? And it's not like HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a mistake. He's revealing all of these ingredients into creation so that we could understand how HaKadosh Baruch Hu manifests in this world and how He governs His world. Begin de ishtimoid in lay. As the Zohar Kadosh says, Hashem did this whole thing called creation to reveal Himself. He wants to reveal Himself. This is mamash, the biggest giloy of Likutei Moharan, is this chachma which He wanted us to know. And He's so sad. He must be so sad that we've forsaken this area of Torah knowledge and we're suffering for it. We have to bring it back. Imagine if in high schools they would give this. Imagine that. Imagine that. And it sounds radical. Imagine if in high schools they taught this. People think this is the extra. This is the basics. Without this, you can't move. And our teenagers, they want to know the big picture. They want to know the big picture. They don't want detail after detail. They want a framework. They want to know why they're alive. They want to know why their body looks the way they look. They want to know that Yiddishkeit fits into a structure. This is the structure. Amazing. So chesed is way too much. But gevura is the opposite extreme, no giving at all. Sefiros is the balance in terms of, and this is key, in terms of quantity. Right? Sefiros is, it's not too much of the giving, it's not too little of the giving, it's just right. All right, Goldilocks? Yeah? Too hot, too little? Yeah, is that? Okay, just right. Sefiros. Netzach gets a little bit more complicated. Rabbi Kaplan explains in Inner Space, which is a book that I highly recommend. Changed my life. Be'ezus Hashem's Yurtzeit is coming up next month, and I'm doing a special shir, details to be announced, together with his, arranged by his daughter, who, believe it or not, lives in Golders Green. I had a very amazing conversation with her last week. Be'ezus Hashem, so stay tuned for that. Netzach is when the amount of giving is right, but it's only benefiting the giver. Sometimes it's not the right moment, right? And so theoretically what's being given over is good, but it's the receiver can't receive. That's called netzach. Netzach means strength, endurance, victory. Now, haid is the opposite. Haid is when the receiver is ready to receive, but the giver is it's only good for the receiver, it's not good for the giver. Haid means submission. And so that's from the standpoint of the receiver. Yisoid is when it's the right amount of giving, or again, we're bringing it back to the kava emtza. It's the right amount of giving, which is the bechina of Sefiros. And Yisoid is that it's mutually beneficial for both of them. And then finally, Malchus is the final product. Malchus is always the final revelation. Malchus has no other spheres that it's mashpia to, and in that sense, Malchus is always just the receiver. It gives in different sense, but in the classical sense, Malchus is seen as a kli, as a vessel to receive. It is the moon, as we're going to see in Torah Aleph, to the sun of Sefiros. Sefiros is the sun, shine in godliness, or any really of the upper spheres, because in Torah Aleph it's really Chachma, that's the sun, as we're going to see. The earliest dawn of a revelation of godliness, and Malchus is the moon that's reflecting it, but it has no light of its own. It's just a kli, it's just a receiver, just a recipient. This system, as we see it, also contains within it all the Yamim Tovim, because everything fits into this framework. So, for example, Chesed, Gevurah, and Sefiros are connected to Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Generally, even though they can also be seen as being connected to Chachma, Bina, and this quasi-sphera Das, which I don't want to get into right now, which is not included in this chart, because when you have Keser, you don't have Das. When you have Das, you don't have Keser, so there's always only 10 and not 11. But that's Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Netzach is Chuasam Hayisa. Netzach is Purim. Haid is Chanukah. All the Yamim Tovim, we have to know what the dynamics are. All the mitzvahs of the Yamim Tovim are connected to different spheres. All the halachas of every mitzvah in the Torah is connected to the energies of the spheres. Everything. This is it. And most importantly, or almost as importantly, this is the form of our actual bodies. And so because we're created in the tselem of this Elokim, which means the force, the power through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself in the world, you and I, in our very own bodies, contain this. So Keser is the cranium, it's the skull, which is like a crown because it sits above the brain. Chachma and Bina, we already said, is the right and left hemispheres of the brain, which in our own Tselem Elokim function like this. Chachma is the aspect of creativity, poetry, big picture thinking, abstract thinking. Likutei Moharan is all Chachma. going to give you a huge workout in your abstraction, right? That's chachma. Most people never use that part of their brain. Chachma, big picture thinking. Bina is the details, which are, by the way, also connected to nigla and nister. Nigla haTorah is bina, detail-oriented. One halacha, one sugya, one taisus, one Rashi, one pasuk. Nister is the whole. Frameworks like these. That's chachma thinking. Chesed and Gvura are our right and our left hand, respectively. Sefiros is the torso. Netzach and Hod are the two legs. Yesod is the reproductive organ, which makes very good sense based on what we just said, right? Because we spoke about that being the place of mutual benefit. And in that place, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought into the world such a chachma that to bring the neshamas into the world, there's an inyan of mutual satisfaction in that place. That's the inyan of Yesod, right? And then finally, Malchus gets a little bit complicated. Malchus is always the receiver, klape, in relation to the one who's giving. So, in a klaliya standpoint, it's the aspect of the female, of the mate, right? But it's not mamish that, because the female also has the tzelem elikim. Klape, her, in relation to her husband is a bechina of Malchus. He receives from her. She receives from him. But more classically, it's a feminine trait. And it's more often associated with Isha, with Chava, which is the first expression of the feminine. That's why the word Zos is always a reference to Malchus. Zos Chanukah, it's the 8th day because Chanukah starts at Bina. So all the way we go down until we get to Malchus, and that's why it's called Zos Chanukah, because it says about Chava, Kimi Ish Lukacha Zos, or she was taken from the male, and in that sense she's the prototypical revelation of the sphere of Malchus is Zos, and also, we're not going to get into all the now Ramaz. I'm just dipping my toes into this realm now. But that's what the pasuk is hinting to us in the Sod when it tells us, Ki bezois yavai Aaron ala kodesh. With this, Aaron will enter into the holy. But it's much deeper than just this. Because from this standpoint, if we're on the bottom in Malchus and we look up and we're trying to ascend the ladder of the spheres, climb the tree of the Eitz HaChaim, so then how do you enter in? Through Malchus. It's right, which is the lowest. So that's Zos. Keep his Zos, Yavai Aaron ala Kodesh. That's the Sod. And once a person gets this clear and you understand how all the Sheimos of Hashem are wrapped up into the system of the spheres, let's just go through them very quickly. I do want to turn the page and get to the other side, but very quickly. Chesed is the Shem Kel, Aleph Lamed. Gvura is the Shem Elikim. It's all the names of Hashem. It's just alluding to this system that people don't know. Lefi Masai Ani Nikra, says the Medrash, I believe in this week's parasha. Chesed is Kel, Gvura is Elikim, Sefiros is Yud Ke Vav Ke without any nekudas. Netzach is the inyan of, it's really both. Netzach and Hod are tzivakos. They go together, but Netzach is Yud Ke Vav Ke tzivakos, and Hod is Elikim tzivakos, but generally both of them are tzivakos. Yesod is the name Shakai, and that's why you see again and again about reproduction, the name Shakai. Ani kel Shakai, pray ureve. Right, period of Urivia is always with the name Shakai. Why? Because Shakai is Yesod, and Yesod is that part of the Tzelem Elikim, and then Malchus is Aleph Dal Nun Yud. Malchus is Aleph Dal Nun Yud. In a more specific sense, and we're going to see this again and again in Likutei Moharan, Malchus is associated with Dibur, with speech. Because in a certain sense, there's a way of seeing the head as already containing within it all the 10 spheres. And in that sense, Malchus is the mouth on the bottom. Okay? So a lot of times we're going to refer to Malchus as Dibur, as the Peh. Malchus Peh. And that's why if Aleph Dal Nun Yud is associated with Malchus, we can understand what we mean when we say before Shemana Esrei, Adoi, right? We say Adni, because we don't pronounce it. Sifasai Tiftach, open up my mouth. Why that shame? Because if you understand even the most rudimentary what we said now for 45 minutes, you have the whole thing now. The whole Yiddishkeit should be different. Everything changes, right? If you have even a little bit of background, the whole Yiddishkeit comes to life. You understand why names are used in different... So it's not arbitrary. Nothing's arbitrary. Everything makes sense. Adni sefasai tiftach. Because Adni is Malchus. We're asking Hashem, open our mouth using this koyach of Adni that I have Elokus inside of me. I'm not a body, a fleshy thing. We're Tzelem Elokim. You understand this? You have inside of your structure the whole entire makeup of the universe. We don't get this. Flip over the page. What we went through now is the system of the Sefiros. Here is another way of setting up the Sefiros. And in this sense, they are called Partzufim. Skip over the category that says Olam. I should have put that at the end. Sefira and Partzufim. Partzufim means holistic countenance. A parts of like a face, like a countenance. And here is where the Sefiros are sort of grouped together and interact in a family structure. Before in the Sefiros, we were speaking about one human being, but every family dynamic is rooted in the system as well. The Partzufim is where they interact like a family. So in this sense, leave out Keser for a second. That's a bit more complicated. Leave out Keser. Let's see Chachma, Bina, 6 Sefiros, Malchus. In this sense, Chachma, which is the second, but in this sense, the first Sefira, like the pasuk says, Reishis Chachma. When you leave out Keser, so then Chachma is first, because you included Das, you left out Keser. So then Chachma becomes the first Sefira, and that's the sod of the pasuk Reishis Chachma. Chachma's first. That becomes the Partzuf of Abba, the face, the countenance of Abba, of the Father. Bina becomes the Partzuf of Ima, the mother. Now here's the difference. The 6 Sefiros are grouped together. They're seen as one unit. One interactive algorithm. That's called a Partzuf. Integrated whole. And that's Chesed down to Yesod is seen as being one unit. That's called Zeir Anpin, which the fancy word is macroscopus, but it means small face. Small face. Zeir Anpin, a small face. And then finally, Nukva is Malchus, the final one, which means the feminine Nukva de Zeir Anpin. It is the vessel for the energy of Zeir Anpin. The reason why this is useful, aside from many other reasons, is that it enables us to fit all 10 Sefiros into the primary name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, which many times we express as the Shem Havaya, because we can't say Yud Ke Vav Ke, so we call it Havaya, which has the same letters, right? We just swapped around. But the word Havaya is a word. It means existence. This name, Yud Ke Vav Ke, contains all of existence in it. How? Because we already explained how the Sefiros is literally all of existence, from the earliest rooted thought or motivation even of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down to the final product. And all those 10 Sefiros are wrapped up into the name Yud Ke Vav Ke. How? How does 10 fit into 4? So from this standpoint, Keser, let's bring Keser back in, is represented by what's called the Kutzai Da'is Yud. The letter Yud has a little thorn on top. That's where the Sefer starts to write the letter from. And that place is so lofty that it's not even a letter. You can't pronounce it. It doesn't make a sound. You can't pronounce it. That's the inyan of Keser. Keser is called ayin, nothingness. It's so far beyond, meaning the motivation of Hashem is so impenetrable to us that we can't understand why Hashem wanted to create the world. We can give reasons, say Melech B'loi Am, Dir B'tachtoinim, Tavat Tov Lehetiv, give all these nice reasons. Ultimately, we don't know. Tachlis idea shaloi neda. Right? The pinnacle of knowledge is to know that you don't know. And that's why Keser can't even be represented by a letter. It's just completely beyond. Completely beyond.
Why do you say we don't know?
Because we don't.
Just know
they're not because they're not ultimate reasons. Each one of them you can push and say, so why did it have to be that way? Because why did he want to Dir B'tachtoinim? Right? You can keep on asking why. Now, the Mittler Rebbe says, we don't ask kashas on a taiva. Right? So you're coming from a Chabad background, you already know that answer. Right? And that's mamish the answer. The answer is that it's an inyan of tainug. Fine. But in a separate context, we can't really put our finger on it. Right? Now, if you want to say this is what he wanted, Seder, but that's already an answer. You understand? Okay, not getting into that now. That's kutza. The yud is just represented by a tiny little kutz, a tiny little thorn. The yud itself is chachma. That's Abba. Okay, the Yud itself is connected to the sphere of Chachma always. There's even a Rashi that makes reference to that incredibly. Once a person starts to know this, the Torah opens up to you like day and night. I can't even explain to you. Day and night. All the Chevra are busy, and God bless them, with Maral and Ramosha Shapira, and all of them is beautiful and wonderful, and it's deep. But you have to understand, all of that Torah is founded on this. And it was still a darga of concealment. Once a person takes that step in, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. This is what the Baal Shem Tov wanted. He said, Chaver, we're coming to the end of Gullus. We need the thing itself, finally. We need the thing itself. Give yourselves access to it. Don't be scared, pachtanim. Be more scared to not access it than to access it. That's what Rav Kook says. He says, you people are all afraid that I'm speaking Kabbalistically. I'm terrified to not speak Kabbalistically because we're losing faith. We're losing our kids, if anybody noticed. We're losing people. And we have the answers. We're not making use of it. And then we fetch to Hashem. Hashem gave us the refuah. So you see a pasuk, it's a Rashi. The pasuk says, Az Yashir Moshe. For Rashi, what's Yashir? What's the Yud? Az Yashir, then he will sing. Okay, beautiful pshatim, beautiful. Azi, but it doesn't make sense. Al pshat. Says Rashi, it's a Rashi. Yud, that letter Yud, Al Shem HaMachshava Nemar. It says Yashir, that they thought that they would sing. Says Rebbe Nachman, it's a Torah later on. He says, beautiful, this is Mamish Kabbalah. Yud, the letter Yud of Yud Kevavke is always Al Shem HaMachshava, which is another word for Chachma. So Yud is connected to Chachma. It could have been any letter. Right? So even in Nikla, you see manifested this side of Nister. Yud is Chachma, is the parts of Abba. The first Hey is Bina, always connected to Bina, which is the concept of Ima. Now Vav, of course, is Gematria 6. So it's going to contain the 6 spheres, which is the link between Bina, which is the sort of the culmination of the heavenly spheres, Keser Chachma Bina, right? So that's called the heavenly mother, and Malchus, which is the final Hey. It's the same Hey. It's supposed to be the manifestation of that master plan. Vav is the 6 spheres that links. That's why the letter Vav in grammar, Hebrew grammar, always links 2 things, Moshe ve'Aaron. That's why in the Mishkan, the Vav was called a hook. The Vavei ha'amudim were hooks, Vavim. Because that Vav of the 6 spheres is linking the first Hey, Bina, and the final Hey, Malchus, both feminine spheres. And they get linked together, and that's you and I are walking around this world as a little Vav, sort of bridging heaven and earth. That's our task, is to draw heaven down into the earth. That's Malchus. And one... Exactly. The Vav HaChibur, Moshe ve'Aaron. That's called the Vav HaChibur. Absolutely. So we mean in grammar, Vav HaChibur. And finally, the last system that I'm going to express to you now. Of course, I went way over time, but I didn't because this is crucial, and we'll have to on Sunday. I'm going to speak very, very quickly. We're going to go through this very quickly. We're not going to have time to do any of Likutei Moharan justice. I'm just telling you, we're giving overviews, a taste, a te'ima of the Torah. That's it. We're going to be going so quickly that don't expect to mamish sink your teeth into it. That'll be on you. Shabbos, Sunday, person wants to know what to do. Other times in the day, take a Torah and really go through it. We're going to give overviews. So we're going to try to add in the first 5-10 minutes to the Hashmata. It's a very small Torah. Rebbe Nachman has before Torah Aleph. We're going to try to do that as Hashem on Monday. But finally, let's take a look at the Olamos. Olamos mean worlds, but not worlds like we think worlds. In our world, this globe is a world. We think maybe there are other worlds out there, and you wonder whether to aliens we're aliens. Okay, going to have some fun thinking about that today, right? But we have a world. That's not what we mean. We don't mean that there are other worlds somewhere. In Kabbalah, a world is from Milashon Ha'elem, which means something that conceals God, but like we learned from Rebbe Nachman and Akdama, in Kabbalah, the concealment is the revelation. Right? So it's not that which conceals, it's that which enables God to be revealed. How does he reveal himself? Through different simsubim, through different vessels, through kalim that are called concealments. The Olamos are realms of concealment/revelation through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself. And they align perfectly with this system of the spheres. The first is called Adam Kadmon, or Ak. We almost never speak about this, Adam Kadmon, because it's Keser, it's Ayin, it's impenetrable, it's completely beyond. And that's primordial man, right? That's called the Shir Kaima, which is the source for Art Selam Elokim. And it's without any physical representation, Chas v'Shalom, absolutely ruchnius, and none of these things are divine. There's Echad, Yachid, Miyuchad, Chazak, Ma'achid, Eser Spheres. We say in the Piyut and Shalosh Shudas that everybody sings loudly and has no idea what it means, right? Which is Kalmistater. The whole thing is on the spheres. Chazak, Miyachid, Eser Spheres. Nobody knows what it is, but everybody sings it with such gusto. It's amazing. We stop them and ask them what the pshat of the words is. Nobody knows. Right? But the whole thing, Chazak miyached eser spheres. We want, Hashem is the ma'ached. He created these spheres. They're not godly, they're not divine. Chas v'shalom. Chas v'shalom. That's Atik Yomi, and that's the realm, the world of Atik Yomi, right? Or Adam Kadmon. And then we have the world, many of you may have heard of the world of Atzilus, which means the realm of emanation. That associates with the realm of Chachma, which is the earliest emanation off of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol which is Ar Ein Sof, which is the light of the infinite, becomes the realm of Atzilus, where there's nothing there. It's just mamish, the earliest root of creation. The big picture, but it's very, very, very faint. That's called ayin, nothingness. The next realm is called Beriah. Beriah, which is connected to Bina, is Yesh Me Ayin. That's Beresh's bara. Take a look at the Ramban on bara, right? So this is Bina. Yesh Me Ayin. He says it's connected to a form called Hiyuli, or Hayel, which is like nothing, but it's something, but it's nothing. It's mamish, the material out of which all material is made, but it could be everything. But it's not mamish nothing. That's called the Yesh Me Ayin. The 6 Sefiros, as we come down into this Olamos, 7 days of the week, right, etc., right, that realm, Olam Chesed Gibana, that's called the world of Yitzira, which means to take that which has already been created in Bria, and we begin to form it, right? That's Yitzira, that's the world of formation. That's called Yesh, right? So we have Ayin is Hatzilus, Yesh Me Ayin is Bria, Yesh is Yitzira, it's a real Yesh, and then finally the last one is Asiya, is the world of creation, which is our world, the world of creation, the world of action, the world that's already formulated. 2 final things to say about this system, and I'm so glad that Hashem gave us Siyata Deshmaya to do this. Unbelievable! What a resource this year could be, for people just looking to have Akdama. Chazde Hashem. Very quickly. These 4, let's say 4, because we usually leave out Keser, we don't usually speak about it. So Chachma, Bina, 6 Sefiros, Malchus, Yud, and Hey, and Vav, and Hey, that contains all of creation, and how we understand that in a much deeper level, also contains the framework of all subsequent 4s. So for example, Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afar. It's really out of order. Water, fire, air, and earth. Right? These 4 elements, Yud, Ke, Vav, Ke. Water is Chachma, Bina is fire, Vav is air, and Hey is earth, and really finally, all 4 levels of our created world, which is inanimate, plant life, animals, and humans, are also wrapped up into the system. So the final Hey is inanimate, right? It's the lowest. The Vav is plant life. The Hey is animals, the Yud is humans, and the Kutza the Ice Yud, which is still part of the Yud, is Am Yisrael, who have a job within the collective of humanity to channel down these teachings to the whole world, which are part of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. They are, because it's part of Emunah. Everyone needs to know this. Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz Paskin is somebody that I know that you're allowed to teach the Sheimos of Hashem in meditation to Goyim. Somebody told me that. If you're interested, I'll put you in touch with him. He said that's absolutely part of Emunah. This is, you spoke about mission. This is our mission. We have to know this, and we have to teach this to the world. Hashem should bless us, B'ezras Hashem, to take this journey on the outset with strength and with joy and with gratitude and with excitement. And what a week it's been. Ashreinu, Ashreinu. Thank you, Yidden. Thank you for being a part of it. I feel like my whole life changed on Monday morning. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way. Everything's different. Everything's different. Ashreinu. Ashreinu legamri. Thank you so much, Yidden. Thank you. שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני